Yes, the worst of anime will be a recurrent feature. Once in a while, I'm going to check which are the worst on my anime list and come talk about them. And even this early, I can already see some patterns. Low-budget hack, ONAs, and visual novel adaptations, of course. On my video of Sky on the channel in Portuguese, I was told not to devalue the visual novel because the OVA is horrible. I didn't play the game, but all I said is that there was RIP in the OVA, so there might be there too. I still don't know if there is or isn't. I only know the game must really be better because there's already someone defending it. And here we go again, because I'm not going to play Skelter Heaven, but there's an anime adaptation with 1.85 stars. No, and Sky practically didn't move. Tenkuu Dankai Skelter Heaven, or Skelter, is a 2004 visual novel for PS2, supposedly with light elements of rhythm game. And for those who don't know the story, you need to see it step by step to feel the impact of how poorly done the OVA is. We start with heartbeats while the Earth slowly gets into frame, then slowly gets close, bounces a bit, and it took over a minute until the time we stop looking at the Earth. And it certainly feels it took time, not to mention that I mustn't be the only one to see this, right? Passing by the vroom in the heartbeat, the city is shown empty while they talk about an entity being there and not having moved yet. At the same time that people are getting angry with the government for having to stay in bomb shelters. Hey, it takes time to make a giant rifle. The opening gives us the name with no vowels, which is fashionable for some reason, and sentences start coming, which might be from the game? You hold in your hands the power to save her soul from her body's pre-programmed fate. Who's she? Calm down. You thought you'd have things coherently explained? Well, it's the one in the middle, right? Must be the one in the middle. This is the more relevant one, though it's just thrown in here. They also talk about trying to create humans who'd obey orders from birth and were able to after years, a previous version having failed. That they were programmed equal but became different over time, besides being called something in German that doesn't seem to make sense. Like, prophet is almost there, so maybe it's another word that was destroyed by English? Or in this case, would it be Gelman? They become one with a Skelter, which makes me think they are like that vehicle from South Park and trained for that day, showing images that might be from the game too, kinda thrown in as well. And then we see a mention and images that we'll see during the OVA. But the quality is clearly different, so I assume what was done for this one is the poorly done part, and whichever is a bit better is for being from the game itself. The OVA itself starts with news that the object started to move. We see military sending a jet to intercept it, a guy walking through a corridor somewhat slowly, and the choice of angle is interesting, but of course, a door is going to open at the exact height of the main one's boobs, to correct itself when she gets surprised for meeting him. So strange angles shouldn't be anything uncommon here. And his body is totally different. He's not the only one. I mean, for someone who focused on her boobage right before, it's quite odd to see them so poorly drawn. Scolding for her not going where she should be when they sound the alarm, and she's even lower than him when he walks. Did she eat the mini no mi? He goes into the command room, where the boss is the only thing that seems to have survived the filter. I mean, look at this poor thing. There's just pieces of her left out of the chair. He guesses how big the thing is, someone says the energy readings are going up, but how did they not know its size before? I thought you were always monitoring the blooper. Not that one, this one. The boss asks if they're ready, to which the guy answers yes. We see one of them practicing bow and arrow, another one letting them know about the call, and PS2 graphics. The textures aren't horrible, I'd say, just outdated. But then we have completely still and lifeless dolls stuck to the computer graphics body, or cartoons that seem better but cut up by the mechanism. It simply doesn't work well. Effect to pretend there's movement, slow movement, and right after it looks better because the tricycle parts are drawn. If it keeps improving like that, around the 4th hour we'll have one of Zillion's Tri-Chargers. Not that this would improve the memory missiles pointing down. The battle keeps going slow, changing from drawing to still doll back to drawing, and all the slow movements are slow, so it lasts less than me talking now, but there are more close-ups to pretend it works. Dong Qingzhao gets the attention of the ones fighting and shower, where the main one is still washing herself, and one of the ones who are fighting puts on her uniform and goes. Hey, wasn't there an emergency? You're awfully calm in the shower for someone who has something so important to do. No, we have to stop and see the main one's memory of the two colleagues in a smaller version of that park ride, where we see there was a 6th one, which we'll never see again. In fact, I don't doubt this type of equipment could be used to test resistance or something, but I'm hearing the reactions and I have to imagine this was meant for other purposes. You'll have to train if you're going to use the it. What do you mean when we're back? After the commercial? Finally, the 5 are there. The boss talks seriously about the Inkling as if it were a terrible enemy that hasn't done anything and gave everyone time to escape. Of course, the main one would be afraid of an Ikayaki before it's ready. The armed forces go first as bait because the boss thinks the monster will need to recharge after attacking. The plan is they will use a bazooka to fire a probe into it, discovering its neural core, whatever that is, and then be able to destroy it. It must be an S2, right? Anytime now they'll say they don't have boobage, just 2 S2 organs. Would that be an S4 or an S to the 4th power? It's just, if we have people in shelters being unhappy, that means it's been a while, right? But then, the boss is guessing how big the creature is and how it will likely act. Meanwhile, they're measuring the energy inside the creature they seem to know nothing about. They need a probe to find the neural core, so how do they know this creature has one of those? Did they just not want to say brain? How do they measure energy and not know where the brain might be? Nothing makes sense. Consider this your only chance. Because Drama, the main one, is chosen to attack the core, and it seems not to know what that means. Not that I do. She's supposed to fire the probe or attack after someone sends the probe in. The blonde was going to say something, but they are interrupted by an alarm that's activated because the armed forces started attacking? Like, wasn't that a part of the plan? Why the alarm? The mustachio cephalopod,
the roughest, toughest He-Man, stuffest hombre has ever crossed the Rio Grande,
moves slightly one eye and starts swinging its long arms, so twinkles.
Perfect.
A tractor brings the bazooka, the guy from before and the main one walk down a corridor slowly, but the blonde is there to say she doesn't accept that. Lady, I know you're frustrated, but why do you seem sad while talking angrily? Factory defect? The guy tells the main one to go ahead, with his face getting a crooked eyeline, and she goes kinda skipping. The blonde asks if he's okay, sending his little girlfriend. He says he doesn't let his emotions dictate how he acts, while acting in an angry way. Only the blonde says she has better results than her in everything and should be sent instead, to which he responds she likes to act on her own. It was meant to be anger, but it looks more like she's cold or something. So, did I mention this OVA was probably for selling the game? As I said, this is a visual novel from the end of November, and the OVA is from the start of December. Of course, one would imagine the idea was they'd see this and would get interested. I must say it don't work, but having in mind that this only exists to spread the game, this is even worse, because the blonde lady's confused emotions here don't make it look as if there's romance in the game. It looks more as if she she can come back, open the main one's stomach, and go sailing with the guy in a bag. Especially because she goes to her Skelter smiling. She says she's ready, the others appearing out of the blue right after.
Como assim você já tá aqui? Eu tava escondido atrás da porta só esperando você me chamar.
Meanwhile, the main one is also ready to go, says the blonde one was right and would be better, but that she doesn't want to disappoint, and is going to tell her captor how she feels after the mission.
I feel kinda gassy.
Captain, on a jet, says he has to act because the readings are going up. The blonde lands, which means she touches the Dextro Transformer's foot onto a leg of the Squid Stricter. Yes, I'm also surprised Ben 10 has a play. And the colleague talks about her being good, her lips going on when the line ends. She is going to insert the probe, and the captain tells the main one to get ready to attack after that. The Gasomon doesn't do a thing until it's shot, and then leaks. Giant Tentacle knocks the blonde down, making the main one worry and not pay attention to the other tentacle coming towards her. I think we all know what that means.
Take all the world.
Another one of them screams and gets the tentacle whipping. No, not that. I think it was supposed to be her throwing herself in the way to save the main one, but the way it was going, the tentacle would get both of them. The guy tells her to focus on the mission, she screams. I'm not sure if it was meant to be crying, and only then they detected the core. So how was she going to attack beforehand? The Ood just waits there, and she was just down and gets up. I wonder how she didn't hit a building. Poor thing. If I hit a dummy like that, it's gonna be bad. The tentacles throw out tentacles. The guy sends all units to cover, but then is caught, because I imagine he's flying as well as the main one, and his jet is thrown. But the main one catches him trying to save him. But the tentacle squared destroy part of her machine, and we see her screaming in the air as if the jet wasn't below her. Scene of her floating in the water while the boss says she's synthetic. I can't imagine why. And will become smarter than humans. Her physical abilities evolving as well. She might even be able to control yogurt!
だが、もし将来、彼女らが我々に牙を向いたとしたら。
Are you sure you're not thinking of the woman from Species? Her screaming again, but with no sound. Even the movie knows it's annoying. Her as a student asks how long she has to live. The guy asks if she's afraid of dying, and she just wants to know more about her life since she isn't human. He says they don't know, but not to worry because the organization is responsible for her well-being. This is actually a great example of the problems here. She talks almost smiling about it, goes to a more serious face without visual change between them. In fact, she barely has a mouth here. Then she says she wants to know about her life cheerfully, but it's not as if this is a happy situation. The guy seems to have no change, her posture has no change. If it were a recording of the visual novel, as in the credits, it might have been less noticeable. Plus the plastic petals that should mark her growth, but she just hears him and says the orders are absolute. Then hearing she doesn't have anything insubordinate within her and getting surprised. Yes, it's quite obvious that she'll get worried and ignore orders so she can save him, but that would be the change, no? Her accepting the orders isn't the change, so the plastic petals could possibly be pushed putrid for how petite the permutation appears to pass. It's as if a movie talked about a plant well known in Brazil and the translation removed its oh, yeah, they did that. Babyhead's arm gets loose, but it goes backwards while the jet goes down. I don't know, maybe they confuse physics with physical education. The blonde talks with her, but can't stop flapping her lips. The re-tentacles look like a bird's nest, and the guy tells them all to get back because he was going to end the target by throwing himself at the weak point. The boss asks if he went crazy. He says he convinced himself it was just a job, but when he thinks about the training, he only sees their smiles. While we see them in the ridiculous uniform even the Olympics wouldn't accept because of the shoulder pads, slow simulator game, and the main one goes and stops him. I think I was supposed to have a reaction. Hey, how is she holding the ship with only one of the arms? And without the right one, that would be near the ship. The blonde decides to go in his stead, the main one screaming for her to stop and goes too, and Squiddly Diddly was just waiting all this time. Attacks, poorly done demonstrations of the main one evading, since it doesn't seem like the tentacles tried to touch the instrument, explosion for no reason, and it seems the one who was cutting was another one, not the blonde that seemed to have gone earlier. With so little characterization, it gets pretty confusing. Maybe it's clear for someone who's played it, if for instance, each has only one weapon, but here it seems they get a weapon of their choice as they leave. And when she cuts the skin, making something come out that I don't know if it's liquid or smoke, Squidward moves his eye. They announce they've entered the target, and they float in the ether of the neural core. The main one says it's talking directly to her mind. Focusing on her winking fast, she answers she knows that humanity destroys, but that's not all it does, and that they have to defeat it, suddenly having her equipment again, and saying she fights for that man who is the most important person for her. It seems it really was smoke, and that Squid Girl was floating because of it, since it falls kinda slowly. The guy looks from afar, we see the main one's scuttle broken, a green one with blood, or strawberry jelly, people trying to repair part of the scene's background, with AV cables apparently. The blonde, which I think we didn't see get hurt, is laying still on a stretcher. Obviously they learned from Sky. But here, there isn't even any movement. Wait! This was supposed to be her getting hit? Because she seems entirely capable of getting out of this. I was trying to understand how that explosion we do get would have been the blonde, but I think this was meant to be her surrounded, which didn't even register because she could just keep moving. Helicopter over a spot, the squid's body under a tarp, it turned to pepperoni? What? The boss gets a call, says it wasn't effective, the problem was how humans used it, and that's always the case. I think it was supposed to be ambiguous between the Skelters and the girls, and then deletes the guy's file, which is even more confusing, because if it is a file, maybe they'll kill him, but if it's just the phone contact, maybe he's just fired. We can't really know. A year later, we see the news guys saying that some entities like that one showed up. We see there are 8, maybe there are others somewhere else, Earth with a heartbeat, fade out, credit with image from the visual novel that put the animation here to shame. End of the day, I can only see how derivative this movie is. There's nothing wrong in being derivative. Many mastered this way of creating, many an interesting story coming from let's explore this kind of thing. It's just that there's a difference between I'll make a story like this and I'll make something like this, so they think it's the same. I hope the game is better than this, because here we only have, in the best case scenario, the shallowest of bases used in a story with no development in order to make it reasonable. And in the worst, we have every reason to believe the game isn't worth it and is just the end of Evangelion with no cojones to be violent or horny, making it a notion of, you know.